ó yá tálára bá ti ń gbọ́ kó sọ fàjẹrò tájẹrò bá ti ń gbọ́ kó tàtàpọ̀ ẹ̀sọ́ tí ọwọ́ àràǹgún àga bọ́rọ̀ tó gbòde ti gbẹ̀rẹ̀gẹ̀ jíjẹ lórí afẹ́fẹ́ ọ̀rọ̀ tó gbòde níbi tẹ́tí máa pàdé bá mẹ́tò kọ́láwọlé Idris Sule tòun tàlájà Àbíkẹ́ Akín pẹ̀lú àti balógun Òdúnifá Adébáyọ̀ pẹ̀lú pásítọ̀ Amos Ọlátújà àti Tajudeen Tìjání Àlàbí Ajámájẹ̀bi ní gbogbo ọjọ́ ìṣẹ́gun tí a mọ̀ sí Tuesday láago 4 ọ̀sán ní USA Eastern Time tó jẹ́ agogo 9 àṣálẹ́ ní UK Time àti agogo orílẹ̀-èdè Yorùbá tíá ọ̀rọ̀ tó gbòde tọmọdé tàgbà ló láǹfààní àti wètò yìí nítorí pé ó kún fọ́gbọ́n tó ń tòye tá a nílò lásìkò yìí gan ọ̀rọ̀ tó gbòde lórí ètò yìí bákan náà lẹ́ ó ti láǹfààní àti máa gbọ́ òkodoro ọ̀rọ̀ ohun tó ń lọ lágbàáyé ohun tó ń lọ nílẹ̀ Nàìjíríà àti ní orílẹ̀-èdè gbogbo láì fi ipò mọ́yọ̀ rárá fún ẹ̀kúnrẹ́rẹ́ àlàyé síwájú sí tàbí tẹ́ bá ní àwọn ìbéèrè àti àmọ̀ràn kankan ẹ lè pe atọ́kùn ètò sórí +1 203 685 2961 tàbí kẹ́kàn sí +44 793 972 6080 bákan náà ní ẹ lè pe +234 706 787 2785 ọ̀rọ̀ tó gbòde a ò ní wá mìtì nínú olóríire àmín. Ìkéde ìdẹ́sítì gbẹ̀yìn látọwọ́ ìgbìmọ̀ tó wà fún ìpolongo àpapọ̀ ẹ̀sìn ilẹ̀ Yorùbá tá a mọ̀ sí Yorùbá Nation Multi-Faith.
pé a kú àbọ̀ sórí ètò yìí onítàn ní Tuesday ìjẹjọ la ṣe kan adúpẹ́ lọ́nà pé ó sọ wá di èní ní àsan wa fún ayọ̀ àsan àfowó ẹ jọ̀ọ́ ẹ̀yin èèyàn wa tẹ́ wà ní tẹ́ wọlé through YouTube ẹ wá nǹkan fìdílé nǹkan ìgbádùn ní ètò wa tèmi àwọn àlejò wa wọ́n ti wà ní orí ìjókòó so a dẹ̀ ní jẹ́ kó pẹ́ láti di pé a tètè bẹ̀rẹ̀ kíákíá ẹ má gbàgbé pé tí wọ́n bá sọ̀rọ̀ fún wa tán tí ẹ bá ní béèrè kan ṣe àlàyé ẹ̀ fún wa ó pẹ́ wá jù a gbọ́dọ̀ a lè ju 1.5 hours lọ a dẹ̀ ti lò bí 8 of the 1.5 hours by now so ẹ jọ̀ọ́ ẹ jẹ́ ká fi ara balẹ̀ ká fetí lẹ́kọ̀ọ́ inú wa dùn ara wa yá pẹ̀lú tá a bá gbọ́ orúkọ tèmi ní Bámẹ́tò Kọ́láwọlé Idris Sule mo wà ní ilẹ̀ Amẹ́ríkà ẹ ṣé gan ni àwọn èèyàn mi tó kù náà ti wà ń jókòó so màá bẹ̀rẹ̀ láti orí ìyá wa Alhaja Àbíkẹ́ láti ìlú ọba UK àti bàbá wa Ọlátújà táwọn náà wá láti US so oníapá ṣe ìfihàn rẹ̀ wọ́n á dárúkọ wọn so ká passport tí àwọn bàbá náà bá wọlé Àjàmájẹ̀bi wọn náà ní opportunity láti introduce ara wọn but láti má wait láti má dúró de pé à ń retí àwọn kan sí ìsàn àlejò àti wọn jókòó mo gbé mo pass baton mi fún ìyá wa Àbíkẹ́ kan náà introduce ara fún ara ilé so ẹ ṣé ẹ kú kalẹ̀.
Ẹ ṣé bàbá a kú ètò àkàbọ̀ sí ẹ̀kan sí orí ètò wa ọ̀rọ̀ tó gbòde lórí Yorùbá Multi-Faith TV àkí gbogbo wa kú àṣálẹ́, a kú ìrọ̀lẹ́, a kú dédé àsìkò yìí kí gbogbo bá wà ní gbogbo ilẹ̀ àgbáyé. Bẹ́ẹ̀ ni a tún dé ní ọ̀sẹ̀ yìí la ṣe ń wárì lọ́sọ̀ọ̀sẹ̀ ní ọjọ́ ìṣẹ́gun tí ṣe ọjọ́ kẹfà ní oṣù kejì ọdún 2024. A kí yín káàbọ̀ lẹ́ẹ̀kan sí ètò wa ti àṣálẹ́ yìí. Kódà ní àṣálẹ́ yìí àwọn àlejò wa pàtàkì pé ta ti ń wá wọn Ọlọ́run ṣe wá ní àǹfààní tá a fi rí wọn mú wá lálẹ́. Àwọn wa ní jẹ́ńlá ló gbé wá. Kódà ọ̀rọ̀ náà tá máa bára wa sọ tó máa bá wa sọ táwọn ọmọ lọ́wọ́ ọmọ òkan ará olókun ará òkúkọ ọmọdé òkan àgbà gbogbo ẹ jẹ́ ká fi ìdílé nǹkan ká fi nǹkan létí ká jọ darapọ̀ mọ́ orí ètò wa bá wa share bá wa subscribe sí orí ètò ọ̀rọ̀ tó gbòde lórí Motivate TV tá à ń ṣe ní ọjọ́ mẹ́jọ ní Tuesday. Ẹ káàbọ̀ lẹ́ẹ̀kan sí mo kí yín. Orúkọ tèmi ni Alájà Àbíkẹ́ Akínpẹ̀lú. Mo fi kalẹ̀ sí ìlú United Kingdom ní ìlú ọba. Ẹ ṣé mo kí yín. Mo dá bàtọ̀ náà fún bàbá wa Pásítọ̀ Ìmọ̀sọ́lá Tùjà. Bàbá ẹ káàbọ̀ sórí ètò wa tọ̀sẹ̀ yìí. Tó bá tó yìí sà. Pásítọ̀ Látùjà ó bá tó yìí sà.
Ok, ẹ ṣeun mà. Ẹ káalẹ́, ẹ káàsán, ẹ kú ìyálẹ̀ta. Mo kí ẹnìkọ̀ọ̀kan wa pé a káàbọ̀ sí ètò ti ọ̀sẹ̀ yìí. Ètò náà máa dùn, ó máa lárinrin. Ẹ jẹ́ ká farabalẹ̀. Àwọn àlejò tá a gbé wá lénìí, ẹja ńlá ni wọ́n. Dájúdájú, Ọlọ́run dẹ̀ ti kún wọn pẹ̀lú agbára tó máa fi bá wa sọ̀rọ̀. Orúkọ tèmi ni Pásítọ̀ Amos Ọlátújà. Ìlú Amẹ́ríkà ni mo fi ṣe ibùgbé ní Brooklyn. Bẹ́ẹ̀ náà la dẹ̀ ti ń ṣe iṣẹ́ ìránṣẹ́. Olúwa pè wá sí orúkọ ìjọ tiwa. Òun náà ni The Gospel Faith Mission International. Ètí àpèjá rẹ̀ ń jẹ́ government. Bí àwọn màmá wa ṣe sọ fún wa, tí a bá ti wọlé, ẹ jẹ́ ká máa subscribe, ẹ jẹ́ ká máa share, ẹ jẹ́ ká máa love. Ilé gan ló máa mú kí ètò náà kó túbọ̀ dùn, kó lárinrin. Bí ọ̀rọ̀ Ọlọ́run dẹ̀ sọ pé ó ní ká wá Olúwa nígbà tá a lè rí ká pé nígbà tó wà nítòsí. Dájúdájú àsìkò gan tá a lè ké pe Ọlọ́run ni ó dẹ̀ jẹ́ Ọlọ́run tí ó ń gbọ́ àdúrà. Má dẹ̀ ṣe sọ fún wa gbogbo àwa tó máa ń ṣe ìpàdé lórí ìkànnì yìí ẹlẹ́sìn mẹ́tẹ̀ẹ̀ta tó wà ní orílẹ̀-èdè Yorùbá tí a pè ní àwọn oníṣẹ̀ṣe, Mùsùlùmí àti àwọn Kristẹni. Má dẹ̀ ṣe ń parapọ̀ tá à ń ké pe Ọlọ́run lójoojúmọ́. Ó dẹ̀ ń dá wa lóhùn, kò dojú tì wá. Ìgbàgbọ́ wa sì ni pé ohun tá à ń béèrè láìpẹ́ láì jìnnà á tẹ̀ wá lọ́wọ́. Nígbà tó bá dẹ̀ tẹ̀ wá lọ́wọ́ tán, wọn ní fi ẹnikẹ́ni ṣe àwárí láàrin wa. Ẹ ṣe káàbọ̀.
Ok, ẹ ṣé gan ni. Ìyá Àbíkẹ́ máa fẹ́ kẹ́ bá introduce àwọn bàbá wa àlejò wa. Bàbá wa Bàṣẹ́gun Dr. Olúṣọlá Òní àti title tí àbí topic tó máa fẹ́ bá wa discuss. Ẹ ṣé mà.
Ẹ ṣé bàbá. Tó mo tún kí wa káàbọ̀ lẹ́ẹ̀kan sí gẹ́gẹ́ bá a ṣe sọ wípé àlejò wa ti àṣálẹ́ yìí ẹja ńlá ni ẹ gbé wá orúkọ ta ti ń wá wọn Ọlọ́run dẹ̀ fún wa ní àǹfààní láti mú wọn wá sórí ètò wa ti àṣálẹ́ yìí tí mo fi ti ọ̀wọ̀tọ̀ àti ti Ìbàdàn ti ìlú ọba United Kingdom àti USA. Mo fi gbé bàbá wa wọlé, àwọn náà ni bàbá wa Dr. Chief Báṣẹ́gun wọlé sí orí ètò wa ti àṣálẹ́ yìí. Bàbá ẹ káàbọ̀ dáadáa lẹ́dẹ́. Ẹ ṣeun gan ni, ẹ káàbọ̀ sí orí ètò wa ti àṣálẹ́ yìí. Wọ́n á dùn gan ni láti darapọ̀ mọ́ wa lónìí. Nǹkan tó wá sọ náà ní lónìí náà ni pé Yoruba Emancipation, pé kí ni ìlànà ti òfin, kí ni legal way tá a ṣe lè gba Yorùbá nation wa tá à ń agitate fún lórí pé olùgbọ́ rẹ̀ ń gbé wá. Ṣé negotiate ni ìjó tẹ̀ ní ìlànà òfin tó jẹ́ pé a lè fi support bá ṣe ń fẹ́ gba ìlú tiwa kúrò lọ́wọ́ àwọn tí wọ́n fìyà jẹ wá. Ìdáwọn kan tẹ̀ ti ṣe bẹ́ẹ̀ rí lọ́nà ìlànà òfin tó jẹ́ pé bí wọ́n ṣe ìlànà òfin yẹn tó wà, ǹjẹ́ ó ṣeé ṣe bẹ́ẹ̀? Ǹjẹ́ bó ló yẹ ká yà sí? Báwo ló ṣe yẹ ká kọ̀wé yẹn? Àwọn ló yẹ kó máa wá kọ̀wé yìí. Ọ̀nà gangan ni ó fi jẹ́ ti ọ̀nà ìlànà òfin tó jẹ́ pé a máa ṣe ní ọ̀nà ẹ̀tọ́ tó jẹ́ pé wá mọ̀ pé nǹkan tá a ṣe yìí ọ̀nà ẹ̀tọ́ ni torí bá ṣe mọ̀ pé ọmọlúàbí ni ìran ọmọ Yorùbá àwa irú òfin àgbàgbọ́ wa lálẹ́ pé ẹjọ́ ẹ bá wa nànà náà pé kí ni ọ̀nà òfin tá a lè fi gba Yorùbá yìí lọ́wọ́ àwọn tó ń fìyà jẹ wá. Ǹjẹ́ ó ṣeé ṣe bẹ́ẹ̀? Tó bá ṣe pé ó ṣeé ṣe bẹ́ẹ̀, ọ̀nà wo la fẹ́ gbà? Báwo la ṣe fẹ́ rìn? Báwo la ṣe fẹ́ tọ̀ tó ṣe máa yẹ wá? Jẹ́ pé àní kábàámọ̀ tó dámọ̀ wípé ní àwọn ìlú kan tí wọ́n ti gba òmìnira gẹ́gẹ́ bí Sudan lẹ́yìn nǹkan tí wọ́n gbà tán wàhálà sì tún wà níbẹ̀, wọn kúrò nínú ìyà náà. A fẹ́ ṣe tiwa lé ọ̀nà òfin, a fẹ́ ṣe ní ọ̀nà ẹ̀tọ́ tó jẹ́ pé àtúní kábàámọ̀ pé bá ṣe ń jàjàgbara yìí àjà ní ọ̀nà ẹ̀tọ́ tó fi máa yẹ wá, tó fi máa pọ́n wa lé. Ẹ ṣé bàbá, fún tọwọ́tọwọ́ kí yín káàbọ̀ sórí ètò wa tàṣálẹ́ yìí. Káàbọ̀ sà. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Ẹ ṣé gan. Before I go on, I think we sing our national anthem, the Yoruba national anthem, but sometimes you don't actually pay attention to what it says. It says, Bosi Ipo Etore. At that, how many people have actually thought about that expression? Because what it says is that attain the heights that befits you. Bosi Ipo Etore. That is, attain the heights that befits you. And that is something that I think sometimes we Yoruba don't think about, that which position or what position befits us. But that's not what I'm going to talk about today. But I just felt that, you know, the importance of our national, of the Yoruba national anthem, that people don't actually pay attention to. It's very, very important verse in the anthem. Now, you will have to forgive me that I'm going to speak mostly in English. Sometimes I might mix it with Yoruba. My brother already told me of this afternoon that I should go back and learn how to speak Yoruba properly. Now, I start by saying I'm not a lawyer. So don't think I've come here to talk to you as a lawyer. I'm a surgeon. I'm an orthopedic surgeon. I suppose if you want to translate the type of surgeon that I am into Yoruba, it'll be Dr. Anwaro, Dr. Awanto Nilakurigbe, Dr. Awanto Dalese. That's the kind of, because I'm an orthopedic surgeon. Although I'm a surgeon, I also have qualifications in law. I have 2 qualifications in law, one from Cardiff and one from the Montfort University, Leicester. I have used that qualifications over the years. I've been a member of the General Medical Council, and I used to sit on the fitness to practice panel, that is, in judgment over doctors who may have done something wrong. I'm an expert witness in courts, again in my discipline of orthopedics. And I've been what they call a judicial office holder for the Department of Works and Pension in the UK. A judicial office holder is like a semi-judge. You sit, as a doctor, I sit with judges who are lawyers, and we adjudicate in the jurisdictions, criminal injuries. I deal with criminal injuries and then social security as well. In addition to that, I've actually represented claimants before the High Court in the UK and before the Court of Appeal. So although I'm not a lawyer, I do know a little bit about the law. When people talk about how we get out of Nigeria, everybody then draws a blank. You know, okay, we want to get out of Nigeria, but how do we do it? Now, for people like me, who am a pacifist, I don't believe in violence. I have to think about other ways of achieving the same end. And I have told people over and over again that there are 2 ways, as far as I'm concerned, that will take us out of Nigeria. And I'm only going to talk about one of them today, which is the legal route. But one of the ways which I believe is in mega rallies. But we'll leave that for another day. If anybody wants to read my opinion on mega rallies, I actually tweeted something about that yesterday. So if you go on Twitter, my ID is at Bashigun1. Now, emancipation really means that it's an act of being set free, from the control of other people. So you are under the control of other people. And emancipation means you get out of that control. So in our case, what we are seeking to do is to be set free from the control of Nigeria. We seek our emancipation on the grounds that we were unlawfully incorporated into Nigeria in 1914. In other words, in 1914, we didn't belong to Britain or to anybody else other than to Yoruba land ourselves. And Magu now amalgamates us with the other people. And what we say as Yoruba people is that something that is unlawful has to be reversed. Since it is unlawful, you have to reverse it. And we have a precedent, because there are two legal routes, actually. I should probably explain that. There are two possible legal routes. One is through the law of treaties, the law of contract. And the other one is through prerogative law. But today I'm only going to talk about contract, about treaty. And I'm going to be talking about the 1888 treaty that Britain signed with, the Queen of Britain signed with the Alafin of Oyo as the head of Yoruba land. Now, the precedent, that is a decision that has been made before that has an impact on our case is the case of Cameroon versus Nigeria. That's the Bakassi Peninsula case, in which Cameroon said, this is part of Cameroon. Nigeria said, this is part of Nigeria. And it was settled on the basis of a treaty that was signed in 1913. So when we are talking about, my sound to some people that, 1888 treaty, but in fact, the Bakassi case was settled on the basis of an Anglo-German agreement of 11 March 1913. And as a result of that judgment by the International Court of Justice, the Bakassi Peninsula was then given over to the Cameroon. In other words, somebody seems to be interfering with what we're saying. Anyway, as a result of that case, of that Cameroon versus Nigeria case, we can say with confidence that the boundaries that Britain drew in Nigeria is justiciable. If I repeat that, because of the case, because of the Bakassi Peninsula case, it means that the boundaries that somebody is talking, can you just mute yourself,
please? Abioni, mute yourself, please.
Engineer.
So, thank you.
So because of that case tells us that the boundaries that Britain drew in Nigeria is subject to approval or disapproval by the courts. And it depends on whatever treaty Britain signed at that material time. And our case is that on the 23rd of July, 1888, the Queen of Britain signed a treaty with the Alafin of Oyo, the head of Yoruba land. That treaty was ratified by the Queen on the 16th of June, 1890. Now, that treaty is probably one of the most intelligent treaties that a Yoruba person has signed. You have to remember, in 1888, the Alaafin of Oyo was what, if you want to call him an illiterate. And yet the treaty that is signed with Britain is probably one of the most important documents that even Britain itself has ever signed. That treaty covered the four corners of Yoruba land, and it embraced within it all Yoruba-speaking peoples. So, and when people talk about Yoruba land, they actually don't understand how extensive Yoruba land is. Although not all of Yoruba land is included in that treaty, but actually Yoruba land is much more extensive than people think or people appreciate. Yoruba land extends from the Volta River in Ghana to River Niger in Nigeria. And the coastline is over 1,000 kilometers long. That's how big Yoruba land is. The 1888 treaty was intended to maintain forever. That's what the treaty said, forever. It didn't say for 1 year, for 10 years, for 100 years. It says forever. Friendly relations with the subjects of Her Majesty the Queen. That's what the treaty says. That this treaty that they signed was intended to be forever. It wasn't supposed to be just for a short period of time. It was for eternity. And the treaty had a specific purpose. It was intended to develop the resources of Yoruba land by means of legitimate trade with the subjects of Her Majesty. So the treaty was fairly specific. It was intended to develop the resources of Yoruba land by means of legitimate trade with the subjects of Great Britain. And there are 6 or 7 other important bits of the treaty that I'm just going to refer to before we go on. The first one is that it provides for peace and friendship between Britain and Yoruba land. That's the first thing. That's Article 1. That it was intended to have peace and friendship between the subjects of Her Majesty and the subjects of the Alaafin. It also says, Article 2 says, that the subjects of the Queen may always trade freely with the people of Oyo and Yoruba-speaking countries. In every article, that is, the trade between Britain and Yoruba land will be in anything whatsoever. Article 3 is also important. It says that the Yorubas will charge duties on anything or any trade between Britain and Yoruba land if it was customary and if it was reasonable and if it was agreed between the parties. So whatever trade Britain did or British subjects did in Yoruba land, the Yoruba were entitled to impose duties on them. Article 4. Article 4 says that if there are any disputes concerning this treaty, it was the Alaafin that will adjudicate. So if somebody breaks the treaty or whatever it is, the first person to deal with it was the Alaafin. And if he couldn't deal with it, he was entitled to refer it to arbitration. So again, the treaty was specific that if there's any dispute between the parties, the Alaafin was the first person to adjudicate, and if he feels that he cannot deal with it, he can refer it for arbitration. Another very, very important article of the treaty is Article 7. And what that article says is that the Yoruba were not giving up an inch of their land. No cession of territory. And in fact, when the treaty was announced in London in 1888, it actually stated non-session treaty with Yoruba land. And another, Article 8, which is very important. Anybody who understands contract law will understand what I'm saying now, is that in consideration of faithful observance of the articles of the agreement, the Alaafin was going to be paid a yearly salary. And that is important, and I will explain why it is important later on. That Article 8, which says, in consideration of this treaty working, or the Alaafin doing whatever he was required to do, he will be paid every year. So if we now try to analyze things a little bit, if there's any questions as we go along, please don't hesitate to ask, because I don't want you to lose any sight of anything that we're talking about, because the articles are specific and are very important when it comes to litigation. Now, in Article 2, there was reference to countries. And again, that is very important, because that means that the 1888 treaty was between two different separate countries. Britain as a country, Yoruba land as a country. And that was subject to international law. I repeat that again because this is important. In Article 2, the parties refer to countries. That is, in that treaty, Yoruba land was regarded as a treaty of equivalence to Britain, of legal international law equivalence to Britain. So Britain is a country, Yoruba land is a country. What I'm now going to do is to, in 1969, there was this convention, they call it the Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties, which is the law that governs all treaties now. I'm going to take bits of the 1888 treaty and show how it marries with the Vienna Convention of 1969. The reason why I'm doing that is that some people sometimes say, the treaty that the law has changed and so on. But in fact, nothing has changed. Although the Vienna Convention has codified the law, but in fact, the law was always exactly the same. It was just that it was not written in one document, because that was the convention at the time. And Britain at that time had a vast experience in treaty making. So Britain knew that the treaty that they were signing with Yoruba land came under international law. So if we compare what has happened, or the 1888 treaty with the Vienna Convention, the first thing is that only states had the capacity to sign treaties, to conclude treaties. Only states. And remember what we said, Article 2 referred to Yoruba land and to Britain as countries. The Alaafin, obviously, if they signed a contract with, if the Queen signed a contract with the Alaafin, it meant that the Alaafin had the full power to make that treaty. So remember, Queen of England had the power to sign a treaty. Alaafin of Oyo, head of Yoruba land, had the power to sign a treaty. The next important part of international law is that Britain consented to be bound by the terms of the treaty. And how do we know that? Two things. The treaty was signed. So this is not, it's not as if a verbal, this was a written treaty which was signed by the parties. The governor of the colony of Lagos signed on behalf of the Queen, and the Alaafin and his chiefs signed on behalf of the Yoruba. That's the other thing that people sometimes think, don't actually understand the way that the Yoruba governance, the government of each Yoruba state was conducted. This treaty was not just signed by the Alaafin, was signed by the chiefs. Because the Alaafin was not entitled to sign a treaty on his own. His chiefs had to sign too. So Britain consented to be bound by the terms of the treaty. Number one, because it signed the treaty. And number two, the Queen ratified the treaty on the 16th of June, 1890. So by those two acts, signature on the treaty, ratification by the Queen, means that Britain agreed that it was going to be bound by the treaty. The Yoruba had legitimate expectations. So when Alaafin signed the treaty, there were certain expectations. He had certain expectations which are legitimate. The obligation, so the Yoruba people expected that Britain would do or not do certain things. Number one, Britain will refrain from acts which will defeat the object and purpose of the treaty. You couldn't, so the expectation of the Yoruba people was that Britain couldn't do anything, for example, by amalgamation, which will defeat the object and the purpose of the treaty. Number two, as we said before, Britain agreed to be bound by the treaty terms and to perform them in good faith. This is what in law is called pacta sunt servanda. Britain agreed that she was going to be bound by the terms of the treaty and to perform the terms in good faith. And also agreed to be bound in the entirety of the treaty. No minors anywhere. Agreed that the entire treaty, Britain was going to be bound by it, unless a different interpretation could be found in the treaty. So as far as the treaty was concerned, those are the requirements. Those are the obligations of the treaty, which are obligations under international law. So that deals with Article 2, which mentions countries, that the two, Yoruba land and Britain, were countries that came together as friends to sign a treaty. Article 8 is important for another reason, in the sense that Article 8 mentions the word consideration. Unless you know contract law, you probably wouldn't understand what consideration means. But I'll try and explain it. In contract law, there are three important features of contract law. In contract, somebody's got to make an offer. So I will come to you and I say, let us do this business together. There has to be acceptance. Then I'll say, yes, I want to do business with you. Consideration is what you pay for the contract. So, for example, if you say you are going to sell your Rolls Royce to me, and I said yes, I couldn't offer £1 for it, because that would be ridiculous. That is not consideration. So in the case of the 1888 treaty, it was the Queen that made an offer to the Alaafin The Alaafin didn't go to Britain to say, I want to sign a treaty with you. No. The Queen came to the Alaafin to say, I want to sign a treaty with you. And the reason why they were doing that was because the French were already contacting the Alake. You know, they were trying to make friends with the Alake. And what the British were trying to do was to undermine what the French were doing. So the offer of a treaty was made by the Queen. The Alaafin then accepted that offer, and the consideration was that the Alaafin was going to be paid a certain amount of money every year. And on the 16th of June 1890, Britain made a payment of £35 5 shillings to the Alaafin. So the contract was not in some kind of rarefied existence. It was not a virtual existence, because the Alaafin was actually paid some money. So, and that means that the contract was legal. Once the Alaafin was paid, it meant that the contract was legal. So now, two things. We've got the treaty under Article 2, as we said, and Article 8 as well. So now the question is, how did Britain breach the treaty and breach the contract? And Britain did that by the Act of Amalgamation, by adding Nigeria to Yoruba land to some other people to form Nigeria. Britain committed a breach of treaty and a breach of contract. Let me say that again. Britain and Yoruba land had an agreement, an agreement of friendship and trade, which was legal under international law, which was legal under British law. And Britain committed a breach of the treaty and a breach of the contract when it incorporated Yoruba land into Nigeria. The Yoruba did not agree or give permission for Britain to have jurisdiction over Yoruba land. There was no agreement, nobody signed anything, they didn't ask us anything. So there was no consultation, there was nothing. Here we are, Yoruba land, a country, a sovereign state of its own, didn't consent, didn't give its land up, didn't do anything. Britain then decided to take it over and then make it into another country. And that lack of consent, that lack of consultation is evidence of a breach of the treaty and a breach of the contract. Now, what injuries did the Yoruba suffer? Because if there's a breach of contract and a breach of treaty and you didn't suffer any injuries or any consequences, then it doesn't matter, does it? So what injuries did the Yoruba sustain? Well, I will put it to you that Britain caused the Yoruba land very significant harm, very significant injuries. And the Yoruba are entitled to seek compensation. And the compensation that I would suggest is as follows. Number one injury is the indignity of the loss of Yoruba independence and sovereignty. That's the first injury, indignity of the loss of Yoruba independence and sovereignty. And I reckon that probably is worth £1 trillion, I suppose. Then Britain stole resources from Yoruba land. Because the reason why they amalgamated the Yoruba land with North was because Northern Nigeria was broke, had no money. And they were using the resources from Yoruba land to run to run the North. And they were doing that because they didn't, the British taxpayer was the one paying for Northern Nigeria before. With amalgamation, Yoruba land was then paying what the British taxpayer was paying before. So for the theft of Yoruba resources and wealth, again, I reckon we could ask for £1 trillion. And then for the loss of development and trade, which was promised in the 1888 treaty. Remember what the treaty said right at the beginning, that Britain was going to trade with Yoruba land in order to develop Yoruba land. That was the whole purpose of the trade, that you trade with us, we trade with you, so that we can develop Yoruba land. So again, that is an injury, again, for which you can make a claim. Again, you could make up to £1 trillion worth of claim. The next problem, probably the biggest problem actually, is what I call jurisdictional issues. Which courts are you going to take this case to? Well, if you are just talking about the law of contract, then you can take the court to a British or a Nigerian court. Because although Nigeria was not a state at that time, Nigeria was not a state until 1960, until the 1st of October 1960. But when Nigeria became a state, it agreed to assume all responsibilities that Britain had. So in effect, you could sue Nigeria because Nigeria has taken over the responsibility of Britain as far as the 1888 treaty is concerned. So technically, somebody could sue Nigeria. Now, the International Court of Justice has jurisdiction. We know that because they decided the Bakassi case. If you remember, they used a treaty signed by Britain and Germany in 1913 as the basis for awarding Bakassi Peninsula to Cameroon. So in theory, this case could go to the International Court of Justice. However, only states can take their case to the International Court. But if one could persuade a country, and I mean this is one of the things we need to start thinking about. In Brazil, there are up to, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 million Yoruba descendants in Brazil. There are Yoruba descendants in Cuba. There are Yoruba descendants in the Caribbean, especially Trinidad and Tobago. So one could persuade one of those countries to take this case to the ICJ. So there are three different courts that this case could be taken to. Number one is British courts. Number two is Nigerian court. Number three is the ICJ, provided you can get a country to assist us to take the case. Now, who has the legal stand? So we've talked about jurisdiction. Which courts can we go to? Once settled that, your next problem is that who is entitled in law to take the case to court? This is what lawyers call locus standi or locus standi. But again, this is straightforward. The object of the 1888 treaty was all Yoruba-speaking peoples, which means any Yoruba-speaking person who originated from the Yoruba land, that is you and I, have standing. Either of us will take this matter to court. So, and because the treaty says it is intended forever, it has to be, well, I mean, it stands to reason that it was beyond the lifetime of the Alaafin and the Queen that signed the treaty. So you couldn't say, oh, well, the treaty is finished because they are dead. No, because the Bakassi case shows that the signatories, the original signatories in 1913, were long gone. So in terms of people who could sue the British, for a breach of contract or breach of treaty, any of us, Yoruba speaking, originating from the Yoruba land, would take the case to court. I think I'll rest there. I will not talk about the prerogative law. I'm happy to come back some other time to talk about that, because that's going to take another hour to talk about that. So I think I will rest there, and then I'm happy to answer any questions.
Well, Baba Shegun, Chief Doctor Oni, we are very, very glad. Throw light. I have some questions. Please, gbogbo àná la máa ní ìbéèrè o, but ẹ jẹ́ kí àná láti béèrè, but ẹ jẹ́ kí mi kọ́kọ́ béèrè yìí ná. Ìbéèrè mi náà dẹ̀ pọ̀, mo tù wọ́n lẹ̀ torí mo follow bẹ́ẹ̀ sí sọ́wọ́n yẹn. So the first thing, bóyá tètè fi pàtì yẹn ṣe náà pé any of us ló lè gbé wọn lọ sí court, either be three courts, either British court or Nigerian court or international court.
Yes.
Pé wọ́n ti Britain, wọ́n ti bridge, wọ́n ti yapa nípa òfin tán fọwọ́ sí.
Exactly.
So now, wọ́n lọ́wọ́ gbà náà ní gẹ́gẹ́ bí a ṣe ń ronú ẹ̀ pé forceful marriage náà ṣe fún wa by bringing north to Nigeria, I mean to Yoruba land, tán wá pè wọ́n ní Nigeria, nítorí pé àwọn ò lè ṣe ẹ̀tọ́ wọn fún àwọn northerners mọ́.
Yes.
Ó dẹ̀ reflect ní election wa náà gbà yẹn, election tán ṣe nígbà yẹn, tó fi sọ pé bí bàbá ṣe mú bàbá Awólọ́wọ̀ pé ó rí pé ó wà so intelligent débi pé gbogbo nǹkan tó ń ṣe, they will not be able to go along with it. Now wá ń wá ẹni tó wà docile tán lè dominate láti gbé power lé lọ́wọ́, which is what these northerners are saying, and they are doing it. They are saying they are born to rule. Òun náà dẹ̀ náà fi hàn wá yẹn sí níyà tó ń jẹ wá dìsìn. So by the time tí Aláàfin sáyẹn yẹn sọ pé ká ní pé àwọn ṣe aṣojú ilẹ̀ Yorùbá ń gbà yẹn, àwọn ṣé ẹ wà wí àbóyá any of the chiefs wọ́n sign pẹ̀lú Aláàfin gbà yẹn or not? Any of the Yoruba landed chiefs, did they sign with him or like using as head?
Oh yes. It was signed by some chiefs. Okay. It wasn't. I don't want to interrupt you, but we were talking. You are saying that the Fulani said they were born to rule. I have somewhere else discussed this matter of when did the Yoruba become Nigerians, and I think this is one of the things that we really don't understand when we are talking about Fulani and all these things. In 1960, there were three parties that agreed to form Nigeria, to become Nigerians. In 1914, the British had created Nigeria, but the local groups that agreed to be Nigerians were three: Western region, Eastern region, and Northern region. In 1963, again, three regions agreed to be republic. This was not, so it was, again, Western region, Eastern region, and Northern region. So from 1960 to 1966, before the coup, to 1966, there was no, we are born to rule, because there's nobody ruling anybody. The Western region was ruling itself. Eastern region was ruling itself. Northern region was ruling itself. Then came 1966. And then, of course, everything then changed from 1966. We then, for whatever reason, agreed, sleepwalks, or whatever it is you want to call it, into this, what has now become what I call the Fulani 1999 Constitution. The Fulani 1999 Constitution was not signed or agreed to by anybody, because you couldn't do anything different from the three original sovereignties that agreed to create Nigeria. Remember, the British created Nigeria in 1914, but the Nigerians created Nigeria from 1960. First in 1960 with the independence, and then in 1963 with the Republic. After that, there's no Nigeria. The fact that the Fulani have written some constitution and calling themselves whatever it is because we Yorubas are docile. There's nothing in what has happened that you could say is legal. The 1999 Constitution is not legal. There's no legality in it. And what is painful is that we have all these stands, all these clever people who are this, that, and the other. And nobody has really sat down to look at this and ask the question, who are the Nigerians? When did we have Nigerians? We had Nigerians for less than 6 years, from 1960 to January 1966. After that, were Nigerians that were created first by the military and then by the Fulani Constitution. There's no Nigerians anymore because there was no agreement by anybody. We didn't agree to the 1999 Constitution. We didn't agree to be that kind of Nigerians. So it was a Fulani feudal constitution. They call it presidential, but in fact it was a Fulani feudal constitution, which you cannot have in a country that is multi-ethnic. But because, for whatever reason, Yoruba leaders are so feeble, in a piece I call them toothless tigers, the toothless. That's how we have ended up the way we are. And buffoons like Obasanjo, who not really think, I mean, with all his bravado, is very intellectually deficient. That you have a situation where a country was formed by 3 sovereignties. We formed 3 groups, formed Nigeria, West, East, and North. Once that was gone, and you didn't ask for a referendum, you didn't have a plebiscite, everything else is nonsense. And when Tinubu I wrote an open letter to Tinubu about this, actually, to say that the only constitution of Nigeria is the 1963 Constitution. That's the only constitution that Nigeria has. These people since 1966 have been interlopers, usurpers, just doing whatever it is they like. Because we didn't agree to any of it. We as Nigerians, we as regions, we agreed to the 1960 Constitution. We agreed to the 1963 Constitution. We have not agreed to the 1963 Constitution being got rid of by anybody. So the idea that somebody we are born to rule, is poppycock. They're not born to rule anything. What has happened is that our so-called leaders have been toothless. And, I mean, there are many, many reasons for it. Again, I've just written something I'm about to put on Twitter about this, that, we have a nation of toothless leaders. Okay. Which is go on.
I don't want to be dominating the team, but based on what you said now,
yeah,
how can we get out of this situation? Now that we know those that were before us, I mean, like Obasanjo and co, they weren't that intelligent. No. What can we do presently to make sure this thing comes out? Because Tinubu twist, it's with them. Yes. What do you think can, lead to coming out of this? Or what can the Yoruba people do to regain our freedom?
Okay, well, we've already discussed one way of doing it. Because
take them to court.
Yes, if you went to court and the 1888 treaty is said to be valid today, then Yoruba land does not belong to Nigeria. It's as simple as that.
Okay.
If we went to court either in Nigeria or in Abuja or in London, and the outcome of it is that the amalgamation of Yoruba land into Nigeria was unlawful, then Yoruba land is out of Nigeria. It's as simple as that. my own second view, which I mean, you know, people may or may not agree with. I'm a pacifist. I only look for non-violent ways of doing things. My own other view is about rallies. And you know that rallies are very effective in Nigeria because when Igbo's rally was successful, they attempted to assassinate him. If it wasn't effective, they wouldn't do it. And the reason why they were afraid is the Arab Spring. I don't know if you remember the Arab Spring, which was a series of mega rallies in the Arab world. And before people start sticking their noses in the air, those rallies got rid of Gaddafi, got rid of Mubarak of Egypt, got rid of the guy in Yemen, I think the guy in Tunisia also got. So these were just ordinary people on the streets demonstrating day in, day out, day in, day out. In the end, the governments capitulated. And it's happened here before. Because Fumilayo Ransome Kuti took on with Egba women, Abeokuta women, they took on the colonial government. No, not just Alake, the colonial government, because they said they didn't want to pay tax. The women said, we are not going to pay tax. We want representation. And they got both of them. So they were going on rallies. At one stage, they spent nearly a week or so camped in the palace of the Alake. They didn't go, they created a camp there. These women were being beaten, arrested. It wasn't as if everything was smooth. They were beaten, they were arrested, they were tear gassed, but they refused to go. They refused. In the end, Alake abdicated. Even though it was eventually, I think it was reinstated, but he abdicated. So for me, Igboho and Kuti have proved to me that if you persist on mega rallies, you get your way. You wouldn't look at the civil rights movements in the States. It's because of the persistence of people like Martin Luther King. They didn't have any power. The state was shooting at them, using dogs to kill them, water cannon, all sorts of things. They persisted. And in the end, the state capitulated. Without Martin Luther King, we don't know when the Jim Crow laws will probably still be in place. So from my point of view, we need to go back. I don't know how it's going to happen or what's going to. We need to go back to the rally system where you do rotational rally from one state capital to another, come back again, keep going, round and round and round and round and round, and eventually you win. And you can imagine if you are doing that in the West, and they were doing that in the East as well. So you have mega rallies all over the place, people saying we don't want to be in Nigeria anymore. Things will change.
Yes, sir. So let me pass the buck to my people. So if I have to continue on and on, I think we take the floor. So let me allow Baba, excuse me, Pastor Latuja.
Yeah.
Pastor Latuja, please.
Yes, sir.
So let me throw the baton to you now.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Daddy, we really appreciate your, presentation for us this afternoon. It goes a long way. And according to what you have just told us, you said that the treaty that Allah signed with the Queen of England in 1888 was legally banned. But now, both of them, they are no more available. And it's over 100 years. It is true that by going out for rally, it's one of the ways, but it's not the final way. Because there are some categories of people that we need to talk to we need to have meetings with, so that we can have our total freedom as Yoruba. But who are the categories of those people that we can sit around the table? Now that we are in the era of Tinubu, so what can we do, sir? Who are the categories of people we can sit around the table with? It is true that you said we can go to the court. Personally, I'm just hearing all this information for the first time. I don't have any document to back myself up by going to the court. But the people of your caliber, sir, that you have every resources, you have the information that you can use to take to the court. Is there any way you can rise at this particular time to lead us to such court so that we can have our total freedom? Because if we going all about doing rally, showing a placard and so on and so forth, it's good, but it's not enough. So it's like, is it possible for people like you to lead us to such court, because you have all the evidences with you, and in collaboration with people like Dr. Sunday Igboho, with Baba, Professor Akitoye. If people like you who has the evidence, has the resources to lead us to the court, are you available, sir, to take us?
Of course,
Thank you.
Of course, yes, of course, I'm available. I'm happy to take the case to court, but I mean, it costs money, and I don't have the money. And I can tell you that I've done this before. This is not when I'm talking about it. This is not the first time, because I initiated our going to the court in Oshogbo and Ado-Ekiti to stop the governor's election in 2022. We went to court in Ado-Ekiti and we went to court in Oshogbo. We wanted to stop the elections, the gubernatorial elections in those states. And basically what happened was that we engaged a lawyer. We then started to raise funds to pay the lawyer. I mean, that's the way to be done. If there are people who are willing to donate towards going to court, that's relatively easy. We will hire a lawyer, and then you'll file a case in court. The Brexit, for example, the Brexit case, which goes to prerogative law, which sometimes if I'm called back, I can talk about, was taken to court by a single woman, but she was rich enough to be able to afford to pay the lawyers. And what we need is, once there are a group who are prepared to fundraise. I mean, there are different ways of fundraising. Even you can fundraise at rallies. So a rally might actually do a little bit more than just carrying placards, as you said. You could go there and people will donate money to go to court on the basis of this. I don't agree with you that rallies don't do anything, because remember, I talked about the Arab Spring. In the Arab world,
I didn't say you do not, but I said it's not enough.
Well, okay. But I mean, what rallies will do is that it will force the government to do something. If you keep on going and going and going and going, I mean, the government will have to do something. The government is not just going to ignore people rallying every day. No, the government will do something. So now, when people have talked about sitting down and negotiating, who is going to negotiate with who? Remember what I said? 3 regions decided to become Nigeria.
Yeah.
They decided that in 1960, and in 1963, they decided it was going to be a republic. So in order for people to negotiate, you are going to have to reconstitute the regions again. And then each region will then have its own negotiators, and there will have to be equal because the regions were equal. They were equal in strength, equal in everything. So you are going to have to reconstitute Western region, Eastern region, Northern region. And each region will then have to choose its own representatives, and they will then go and negotiate. And in any case, all they will have to negotiate about is the terms of separation, because we don't want to be in Nigeria anymore. So the question, what they are going to negotiate is not whether you want to be in Nigeria or not. No, because that question is gone.
Yeah.
Because if it was illegal in 1914, it is still illegal now. And therefore, all they are negotiating is we owe we owe the World Bank £1 trillion. How do we split it? That kind of thing. And I mean, the reason, again, I come back to the question of leadership, which is why you need the rallies, is that we Yorubas have no leaders. Kosovo, when the elites of Kosovo decided that they were going to be independent, they met and declared independence. When the matter was taken to the ICJ, the ICJ, that they haven't broken in international law. You can declare independence. It's your state. It's your land. But we haven't got, leaders. We've got toothless people as leaders. I mean, take for example, they bombed Ibadan, they bombed Bodija. What has the Olubadan done? Nothing. Nothing. I was saying earlier today, imagine if the Olubadan said, we are going to have funeral procession, a dedicated day, going from Mapo Hill to Bodija, and I am going to lead you. Imagine the thousands of Ibadan people who will turn up. Imagine the number of Ibadan people that's going to turn up. Ibadan is bombed. How many Obas from Yoruba land has been to Ibadan to commiserate with the Ibadan? 2 Obas in Ekiti, they are killed. How many Obas have gone to Ekiti to go and commiserate with the? We have people who talk, they are intelligent. We are intelligent people. They are not intelligent at all. It's all fallacy. Simple things. There's nothing that holds us to be in Nigeria. Nothing. We haven't signed any papers. We haven't agreed to anything. And you call us Nigerians. Why? We haven't agreed to anything. The last agreement we had was 1963. That agreement was thrown out on the 15th of January, 1966. Since then, we've been living a lie. And people are doing elections, they are creating states, everything is a lie. And that is how Nigeria is. Everything is just a pack of lies.
Thank you very much, Daddy. Before I throw the baton to my brethren, I believe this is the right time now for us to make such negotiation. Idi Kakano is there to represent the Igbo people. The Fulani leaders even spoke during this week that Nigeria should be divided into 3, that everyone should go. Then we thank God for our daddy, Professor Akintoye, and Dr. Sunday Goho. I believe they are ready fully to make such negotiation. Even I heard from Oni of Ife yesterday on the YouTube that he also is ready, that Yoruba should rise up and defend themselves. I believe this is the right time, sir, for us to rise up. Okay. And I believe that we youth, we are ready to follow you. If you, our fathers, lead us, and we follow you, and we will not fail. Thank you very much, sir. So this is the right time to make such negotiation. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much, sir. We really enjoyed your, it's really,
Pleasure.
really deep, really, really deep. That a lot of things that somebody like me has not even heard about. So it's so deep that I'm sure we're going to invite you again. So my question now to you, sir, is now that we know that Nigeria is a fake country, it's a fake existent amalgamation, that we should not be there, and we Yoruba people we are really suffering. Now that this treaty was signed by the British government with Yoruba people, and you, sir, you know, that we are in this UK, is there a way that we can sort of be a lead to organize our people in United Kingdom to go probably gather us together and go to the parliament? Because we've been doing rally, which, you know, I've been part of this rally that we've been going, and it's like they're not even seeing us, maybe because we are not many enough. And I can tell you that the rally in Nigeria, you know, their plan is just to kill our people. So that's the people who are not really interested in doing rally back home in Nigeria, especially in Lagos and Ibadan. You know, when Chief Go was in Nigeria, his rally was really, really, you know, heavy, and they really knew he was around. But my point is that now that you are in UK and this was signed by the British government with our forefathers over 1,000 years ago, is there anything that you can take the lead with other people in Britain, probably go to the parliament and present our case before we go to this international court? Because we know we need money to go to any court. Because I knew there was a time that you took the case of Ekiti and Osogbo election to court. I remember that time, you know, that you took the lead in doing that. So is there anything that you can do? Because this is the right time, because the whole world, they know it, but for us not to do it legally, because as you say, you don't believe in violence. So, sir, I want you to just enlighten us. Thank you.
Okay, well, I can tell you, I'm not sure that British parliamentarians are interested. So I think if you are relying on going to parliament, I think it's a waste of time. I have written to parliamentarians. I've written to Sunak. I wrote to Boris Johnson. I wrote to Liz Truss as well, actually, even though she was only there for a brief period of time, which I outlined the sort of things that we've been talking about today. They are not interested. Until something affects them, they are not going to do anything. I mean, Baroness Cox, for example, has been to, visited all these massacres in Nigeria, so many places, wrote a report. But the report was so bland. I mean, they were appealing to the government to do something, to put in place this, put in place that. People are being massacred. If that happened in a European country, they will be down there like a flash. But because our lives don't matter to them, so the idea that you are going to talk to parliamentarians is a waste of time. I mean, the only person that I think has actually showed any interest was Jeremy Corbyn. These people are not interested. They have no interest because it doesn't really affect them. I mean, even telling that silly woman who was the previous Home Secretary, I wrote to her saying, well, look, people are coming here, not because they want to come here, but because of the circumstances at home. That if you helped at home, if they don't have to run away from Nigeria, they won't come here. Nobody will come here if everything was hunky-dory at home. And people don't, it's not economic that brings people here. It's the fear of being killed. They're not interested. The only way that they are going to show any interest is if we went to court, even if you didn't win. The amount of noise that you are going to make with going to court may be enough to get other countries thinking. That's the point. That's the point. I mean, the Brexit thing will have gone away if, I can't remember, the Turner or something hadn't taken the matter to court. And I mean, there's no reason why we can't raise enough money, because there are something like, I don't know, 120, 130,000 Yoruba in London alone. And every one of them is complaining about one thing or the other. But they don't do anything. To be fair, when we had Ilana UK, we had a lot of people joined Ilana UK, between 2021 and 2022. We went from 0 to about 200 or so members, because we were doing something. We were going to go to court. We were doing and people were then happy to follow. And the same thing will have to be done here. Some people will have to come together. As if people are willing to contribute money so that we can start a case going, all well and good.
Okay.
But it's going to cost money. We have to employ lawyers. And if you say, oh well, there are Yoruba lawyers, believe me, when we wanted to go to court in Nigeria for Ekiti, there are Yoruba lawyers. If we get Yoruba nation, it was going to be their own nation. Not one of them volunteered to do it for free.
Yeah.
Not one of them said, oh well, this is going to be my country. We are going to all be free. I will do it for free. Not one of them. They were asking for millions and millions and millions of naira. So that's where the problem is.
Sir, can I throw in this place? Mosado also, yeah, Peter, you done?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Baba Bashigun. Based on what you just said now, not that I'm rich, but usually I always get something that we must be planning on. Assuming we want to go to court, do you have an idea averagely how much will it cost? So people can say, hey, we want to do this thing. Those who will volunteer, we volunteer. Those who are really interested, will do it. Because when we depend on numbers, we are just fooling ourselves. It's like you said, Nigeria, that's what is killing people over there, Yorubas. It's money, 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 selfishness, self-interest. Nobody wants to sacrifice. Like you said, you quoted Martin Luther King. Even this woman that released the slaves, that disguised in getting them in America, So all those people, they sacrifice their life for a lot. But we Yorubas, we are not ready for that. But I'm saying, if you have an idea averagely how much it's going to cost to get lawyers, or how many lawyers, So if we have to if we have to employ white lawyers instead of Yoruba lawyers to get things done, so what will be the average amount it will cost? Over time, maybe people will donate. We had that problem to even have a central account for Yoruba, for each person to be putting either $1 or £1. You could accumulate to a lot of money, but you don't see them doing it. But maybe this one, if it's going to work, you look for some people and see those who are ready to donate towards it. So if you can, see what you can do to that, and let's know, I'm not promising that this house is going to carry it out. No. I'm just saying once we know, we have an idea, we'll be knowing, okay, we're going to need so much money to get this thing done. We plan for it, and may God help us.
You're going to need between 20 and 50,000 pounds.
Oh, 20 to 50,000 pounds.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's the kind of money you are going to need.
Okay.
Because you're probably going to need at least 2 lawyers.
Okay.
Probably going to need about 2 lawyers.
Okay.
I'm just trying to think. One could, I suppose, if people are serious, then it will be worth investigating that. Then it will be worth my time investigating, looking for lawyers and so on and so forth. But my experience from the last one that I was involved in, which took a lot of my time, a lot of my energy, and in the end came to nothing. Although, as somebody said to me, well, you're doing it for Yoruba Nation, you're not doing it for anybody else, so it doesn't really matter.
Don't be discouraged, sir. Don't be discouraged.
But that's the sort of thing we should be thinking about, between 20 and 50,000.
Thank you.
And I mean, basically, once the case is in court, you probably attract a lot more money. I mean, I think it's just getting the case to court is the most important thing. And I think once it's there, then you're likely going to get people who will be interested, because that's exactly what happened with the Ekiti and Osun, when we did the Ekiti and Osun case, that once we were in court, people were then, quite happy to donate money towards it.
Okay.
Because that's, so the first is that we are going to have to file a case first. I mean, technically we can go ahead, because I think I've already written what is called a letter before action. In this country, before you take somebody to court in a civil case, you write a letter before action. And I've written to Sunak about that, to warn him that we might go to court. So we wouldn't need to write a letter before action anymore, because we've already told Sunak that we are going to take this case to court.
Okay.
I think from this the stage we are now, I can guarantee that people are ready, because even the Oni came out that this is big problem and we need to exist from Yoruba. That the way he was even talking, it's like he was blaming Tinubu, and people are now feeling the impact that they voted APC, and it's not what they promised them they would deliver. They're even suffering. That even Buhari time was even better for them. So I think if you should take the case to court, if you decide to take the court, this one that we need, I think people will come round and they will do their bit. So I think we should be optimistic that we're going to, we have a case to present, because it's just so glaring that we are really suffering. We can see it, it's boldly written. They are killing us, where people can't go to farm, people are from PhD, they haven't got job, people are they're just killing us silently, and the whole world just looking at us, that, as you rightly said, because it's not benefiting them, but they're benefiting from our place because they're using our resources. Just as you said that they went to bomb Bodija, nothing has been done. President could not go there. The capital of the land cannot go to media to present something that this is a serious issue. So I just would like you to also talk. I've seen two people hands up. I think Mommy Paget, I think your hand came up first. Okay, ma.
No, it is me that raised up first.
Oh, okay.
Mommy Paget said something to you, ma.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That name sounds familiar to me.
It is Yahweh.
Papa was ilana UK. I was ilana UK.
Yes. Yes.
Àgbà ò ní tán ní ilẹ̀ta.
Àmín.
Ẹ pẹ́ fún wa.
Àmín.
Tó àgbà gbọ́dọ̀ tí ẹ̀ tán nílẹ̀ ni, because gbogbo àwọn nǹkan tẹ̀ ń wú síta yìí, níjọ́ tá a ti ń ṣèpàdé kiri, another dimension lèmi tẹ̀ tún gbọ́ lè ní ìbáyìí. And ẹ ṣé gan ni, Ọlọ́run á túbọ̀ máa fún yín lókun àtagbára. Ọlọ́run á dẹ̀ máa increase wisdom yín sà. Àṣẹ́rí ọ̀rọ̀ yẹn mò ń rò ó bẹ́ẹ̀ ṣe ń sọ lọ. Ṣẹ́rí àwọn ìlú ibi tá a wà yìí. Ẹ ti sọ gbogbo ẹ̀ ní sọ̀rọ̀ tán. Now, ibo la fẹ́ gbé gbà? Ẹ sọ pé bóyá Nàìjíríà ni kán ti gbé ọ̀rọ̀ yẹn lọ sí court. No, absolutely no. Because wọ́n wo Nàìjíríà bí èèrà. Ṣé understand?
Yes.
as if we are, as if Nigeria is worthless. Worthless. Judiciary there is not, you understand?
Yes, I understand.
On the other hand, àwọn náà ibi ìbàyìí náà la wà. A rí wípé there is no fairness nínú judiciary system wọn níbí báyìí. Mọ́, it is not as it used to be. There is no fairness mọ́ nínú kíní wọn. So bọ́lá wá fẹ́ look wọ́n ti kúrò ní European Union ní ìsìn kátẹ̀ ni wọ́n wá ṣì wà ní European Union. Àbá ní ká gbé wọn lọ sí European Court of Law àbí Justice àbí whatever they call it.
Yes.
Wọ́n ti kúrò ńbẹ̀. Èmi ò dẹ̀ rí reason tó fi láti kúrò nínú legal kíní wọn. Judiciary system European. Tọ́ba lè bá wọn ṣe nǹkan mọ̀ economically, ìyẹn ò sọ wípé kẹ́ má ṣe pọ̀ mọ́ pẹ̀lú wọn mọ́ pẹ̀lú judiciary. So, ó wá tó sí ni lẹ́nu báyìí ó buyọ̀ sí. International Court of Justice, mọ àtọ́dún tí àwa Yorùbá ti ń kọ petition kọ gbogbo ẹ̀, ta ti ń gbé àwọn bó ṣe ń pa wá yìí, bó ṣe ń pa àwọn èèyàn. Ta ti ń gbé wọn lọ sí International Court of Justice. I think so. People must have been presenting the case more than 3 years now. Wọ́n ti ń gbé lọ sí Did they say anything? Who are the people that were in International Court of Justice náà gan? Who are the people?
Okay, Sherry, sorry to interrupt you. The difference here is that we are now looking at contract law, at treaty law. We are not saying power Nigeria, no, that's not what we are saying here. We are saying we have a document. We have a document, and anybody can go and read it at the National Archives. I've been there. I've photographed the treaty. You can go there. You can photograph the treaty. No, it's only 4 pages. It's not a long.
4 pages. Maybe we can put it in form of kini.
What I'm trying to say is this: that what we are going to court for is totally different from what it used to be in the past. We are going to,
yes, sir.
Pedrona, we are going to court to say that we have been injured.
Yes.
By the 19th. That's what we are going to court for. We have been injured.
Yes.
And we want compensation for that injury. That's what you are going to court.
Yes.
That is a difference. Because the injury that we have suffered is because we have been deprived of our sovereignty. That is what this is about. So this is specific about the breach of contract, breach of treaty, for which the Yorubas have suffered some injuries, and the Yorubas are now claiming compensation for the injuries that they've suffered. That's what this is about. So it isn't about the politics in no. It's got nothing to do with that. What we are saying is that we have a treaty, we have a contract which was signed in 1880.
It was breached.
It is, yes. And that breach has caused, it's not only breached, it has caused us injuries. We want to be compensated for the injuries that we suffered. That's what this is about. We need to, one of the things that I've learned about law in the UK is focus. You need to narrow down where you're going. You need to be specific. Because if you start looking at other things, the Fulani program and all this sort of thing, it just complicates matters. What we are saying is simple. We have a contract. You broke the contract. We are injured. We want compensation for the injury. That's it. But the byproduct of the case is that if you committed a breach of contract, then we've got to go back to specific performance of that contract, which means we go back to what it was in 1888, and therefore 1914 becomes null and void.
Then let's go to questions directly that will help us based on what we hear. It's clearly stated. It's not a pé torí pé pa one thing, but torí pé wọn jẹ́ ká ṣe ìjọba ara wa ṣe ń ṣe bọ̀ mọ́ tẹ́lẹ̀.
Exactly.
That's the bottom line I can give to anybody. Ẹ má jà tún máa fẹ́ máa tell the story about anything else. Let's go directly to questions that Baba will answer so we can finish up in the next maybe 10-15 minutes. Eshima, Mama Pages, go ahead.
Yeah, good evening. Káàbọ̀ sórí ètò Bashegun. In the first place, I did not support the idea of the treaty being signed for life. It shouldn't have happened. And you said that the Oba at that time was an illiterate. And these people, they like to take advantage. I'm talking of the British. For me, going to court may take a long time to settle. Come today, come tomorrow. Because I think we are even closer now to achieving your Oduduwa nation than going to court. Because everybody knows that self-determination is a right. I think what we can do is the protest and then taking them to court. Can we not take them to ECOWAS? Because with all what is going on in Africa now, maybe ECOWAS could be better. Because when you talk about Nigerian court, forget about that. We all know what happened. And again, all this, I don't think Olubadan can lead a protest because Olubadan is on the payroll. It's just like going against a master. And then if blaming our people, I wouldn't blame them so much because these people have planned this thing for a long time, especially when they were in the military. They took the army to North, in other words, they have the gun, and we don't have the gun. So how can you face somebody that has the gun? That is why it looks as if our people are quiet. But now they are speaking up. So this is why I said self-determination is a right. We have a right to say we don't want to be part of it. And then maybe ECOWAS could be a court we can approach. But for Nigerian government or British government, because they are quiet now, even though about the treaty, they don't want to get involved now.
Okay.
We should not forget that when we get our Oduduwa Republic, we should try and break away from every foreign influence.
Okay. Let me just talk about let me talk about the ECOWAS because this is very important. You can only go to ECOWAS if a right has been breached. Okay, that's the only people think that you can just go to ECOWAS. The African Charter has a series of rights. I think it's 26 of them.
Well, self-determination is a right.
Yes, but self-determination is a right of people. It's a much more complicated than that because, for example, the first people who took this to court was Zaire. I can't remember the guy's name now. When it was Zaire, and the case was lost on the basis of the sanctity of territorial borders, because when all these people took over from the colonialists, they decided that they were going to stick to the borders that were drawn by the colonialists. But again, when you go to court, you have to be specific about what you are going to court for. self-determination always sounds nice, but the difficulty is that there is no mechanism for achieving it. There isn't any. The only mechanism for achieving self-determination today, as we speak, is if you are admitted as a member of the United Nations. There's no other mechanism of getting self-determination. Everybody talks about it. It's all over the place. It's mentioned every day of the week, but there are no mechanisms to achieve it. I've spent the last 6 months trying to write an application to the UN. And one of the things that I came across is exactly what I'm talking about. That the UN says you can have self-determination. African Union says you can have self-determination, but there's no mechanism of achieving it. In law, usually if there's a law, they say if you did this, you get this. If you give self-determination is a right, but how do you enforce it? That's the problem. Because there's no mechanism. Sorry.
And you did say you wrote to Tinubu. Did you get a reply?
Yep.
That's it. This is what I'm saying.
Yeah, but that's not
Nigerian
surprising.
government is just a waste of time.
Well, yes, but you can't. Well, I mean, you and I have been on.
The point here raised is not Nigeria cannot be lost in court. British people gone and a big contract between Yoruba and Britain. That's right. The case. That's the law we want to follow. In any law, Yoruba court. I can say I listen in Yoruba, tabi international law, tabi British law or court.
Because it said Yoruba will not give up any of our land.
Oh yes, it's in the treaty, yes.
So we go to international law. We avoid British and Nigerian law. Yoruba is going to court to claim their right. Every contract ati wa pẹ̀lú ra wa tẹ́lẹ̀ kẹ́tó sọ pé ẹ pè wá Nàìjíríà.
Exactly.
Ẹ̀dá méjì wa ń ta tú yín fún ni. So ẹ̀dá self-determination tẹ̀ ń sọ à ń bá a lọ bá ṣe ń bá a lọ kò di lọ́wọ́. Case being in court kò ṣe ẹjọ́ kejì náà lè máa win ẹ̀ now. But it's going to be a landmark pé àwọn Yorùbá land yìí wọ́n ń jà fún ara wọn. Wọ́n sì bóyá títí as of today. Maybe people are looking at it, bóyá wọ́n á dá kíní padà sí 3 regions wa tá a ṣe wà tẹ́lẹ̀. Táyàn ti advocate àná tí náà fẹ́ lọ, káwa náà lọ. Ó tún help wa ní. We'll be able to fight more on it pé Yorùbá land àfẹ́. Níbi tá a bá jà fún gbà yẹn kò ní kan Nàìjíríà. Tán bá ti lè separate wá sí tí Yorùbá land wà bá ṣe wà tẹ́lẹ̀. Tán bá náà restructure ẹ̀ báyìí. Àwa iná ni àwa la fẹ́ lọ gbéra fún pé ẹ fún wa ní ẹ̀tọ́ wa. Ní bá a pinnu tá a bá rí bá bọ̀ nínú ẹ̀. So, Baba, like I said, whatever we can take, we're going to look for 20 to 50,000 pounds. That's the fight case. Could dissolve we can be in Yoruba nation and still have the case to be won maybe in 20, 30 years. We just want to make sure what belongs to us, we get it. That's all.
Exactly.
So I modify Baba. I think I just only help in that way.
That's fine. That's fine.
Over to you, sir.
No, I need one. Am I worried? Come back, Bella. I need one.
Okay, Segun, thank you very much, Bashegun, for the coverage. Your arguments are well received. There are many ways of achieving freedom for Yoruba. One of the ways is the legal route, which we avoid bloodshed. Okay. Yes, it is true in theory. My personal feeling Yoruba nation, it is probably going to be on the basis of many, many factors. Okay, the legal route here, in theory, is one way, but tẹ́ bá rántí pé àwọn Fúlàní tó ń dominate wa ní Nàìjíríà ń sìn. The kind of people táwọn people yìí jẹ́, wọ́n were indigenous to Nigeria. What you make Nigeria, they've been with us for over 200 years. What intermarry pẹ̀lú wa. And our people here, there's no way we can get Yoruba nation peacefully with these people around us. Human life will mean anything to one. Human life does not mean anything to them. Because to come and do me personally, àwọn Yorùbá ẹgbẹ́ wa, àwọn Igbo na, àwọn Southerners tó ń prop wọn up, àwọn ló ń fìyà jẹ wá, kì í ṣe Fúlàní ló ń fìyà jẹ wá. If bá ṣègùn máa ń sọ fún mi, àmì àbúrò wọn máa ń sọ fún mi pé if all the others and all our governors tó bá decide pé Yorùbá ń lọ, that is it, it's done. That is it. But unfortunately fún wa, àwọn jẹgúdújẹrá ti pọ̀ jù nínú Yorùbá.
Unfortunate.
Honestly. Ẹ wo Tinubu now, all the 8 years Buhari did one bet on pààyàn káàkiri tó ń ṣe báṣẹ. Tinubu kept quiet because he wanted to be president. Ẹ wo Tinubu lẹ́ni now, what kind of presidency ló ń run? It's just a shame on Yoruba. These people are not fìyà jẹ wá because Yoruba unite. I'm telling you. Can you imagine all the Yoruba governors, all the Yoruba obas, they made a unilateral declaration of Yoruba law. That is the end of the matter.
Yes.
Nigeria is finished. Just Yoruba crone in Nigeria. One group of indigenous people goes out of Nigeria. That is in the end of Nigeria. I'm telling you. So point sorry, okay, it's good in theory, it's going to court because you're a pacifist, you don't want bloodshed. But there will be bloodshed. Even when you go to court, if you example now, the moment Igboho won't command the crowd, every I mean, rally Ekiti, Baba Akintoye over 2.3 million people turned up for rally Ekiti. It was not very to quote on the way. Baba is just building more and more crowds. So just a day before, maybe 2 days before the Lagos rally, no loss there of So so that's the first question.
Okay, let me respond. Okay, go on.
That's my first point. My second point is Sherry, the court case, the court case. Monotic Bakumba is a collector British government. Also from Nigeria is a sovereign state. It's got nothing to do with Nigeria is independent at 1960. Problem in that was the response that they gave to it later. But it was someone from my group, Udua Action Movement. The other thing, that estimate they give me between 20 and 50,000 pounds. Multiply estimating by at least 10 times. That kind of case will run into hundreds of thousands and it will take months, possibly years. Okay. It's not going to be a quick case. No way. It will go on and on forever and it's going to cost a lot of money. 50K. It starts from 500K.
Okay. All right. Can I respond now?
Yes, please.
Okay, the first one you said is that there's no way we can get our independence without going to war. Well, I disagree.
It's going to be a combination of the two. And I agree with the court case in theory. They don't want peace. They are very bloodthirsty.
Let me respond to you. We drove the Fulani out of Ilorin. The Fulani, they are human beings. Wait a minute. They are human beings too. No. Let me finish. Okay. You had leadership. Okay. The Ibadan people went to Ilorin and drove the Fulani out of Ilorin.
And today's Olubadan can haven't said anything about the bombing in Ibadan.
Just hang on a minute. You've asked a question about going to war. So the reason why the Fulani are able to do what they are doing in Yoruba land is because we haven't got leadership to resist them. If we had people to resist them, they wouldn't do it. They wouldn't do it. They are human beings. If they fire a gun at you, you fire a gun at them, it's the same. Somebody dies. And the reason why they are getting away with it is because Nigeria does not allow the rest of us to carry guns. Do you want to tell me that if they came to a farmer's a farm and the farmer has his gun, they will then do what? So the idea that, wait a minute, the idea that the Fulani are some kind of superior warriors, it took a Yoruba man to defeat Biafra. If it wasn't for Colonel Adekule, the Fulani could not defeat Biafra. It took a Yoruba man to do it. And I know because I went to Biafra myself to see the effect of what Adekule was doing. So it took a Yoruba man to liberate Biafra. So the idea that the Fulani are such powerful, the only difference is that they have guns, and the Nigerian government says the rest of us shouldn't have guns. The day that everybody is able to carry a gun is the last day that the Fulani will try any nonsense, because they'll be shot.
Correct.
So the idea that they are powerful, they don't have enough common sense to do anything. So that's number one. The second thing that you said was that Britain says it's a long time, it is no longer a problem. Well, with due respect, the Bakassi case was settled on the basis of the Anglo-German Treaty of 1913. That's how it was settled. And the boundary of Nigeria can be settled again on the basis of the treaty between Britain and Yoruba land. It's the same. So I'm not worried about that. The third thing you said was that a case will take years. It depends on the case you have brought. If the case we are bringing is a totally different, it's a breach of contract. You're saying we have an agreement, you broke that agreement, we were injured, this is the compensation we seek. It's not going to take years. Why will it take years? And in any case, you can ask for a case to be accelerated. You can say on the basis that, we've had 100 years of suffering, we want to get out now, we don't want any more. You can ask for an accelerated hearing, which was what they did for proroguing Parliament, they did it for Brexit. So the idea that it will take years, it depends on the case that you present. If you present a complex case, yes. But if you just simply say, we have a contract, the contract was breached, we got injured, we want compensation. That's it. That's all we're asking.
Okay, can I just make my further point? Okay, so Jerry, when you take a case to court, obviously you could go either way. Case court might find in favor of. There's always a possibility where the case the court might rule against you. So it's not a case of the best way to get to Yoruba nation is to go to court and just assume court here might find in our favor. Because the court might have a superior argument or no, please. They might have a different point of view. They might rule against the idea. It's not automatically they would rule in favor of Yoruba nation.
Slow down. The court is a referee. That's all it does. The court is a referee. There are two sides. So we present our case. The British will present their case. And it is the argument that is superior that wins. It's not, the judge is just a referee. That's all it does. The court is a referee.
Yeah, but he could rule against it. If he rules against it, yeah.
Of course. So if the other side provides a superior argument, yes.
Okay.
I mean,
so that we don't assume that the court will automatically find in favor of Yoruba nation, because they might not.
But again, like everything else in life, there's nothing else we can do. I mean, don't let's deceive ourselves. What else are we doing? What exactly are we doing? We're not doing anything. What are we doing? So the idea of, oh, well, this court case is not going to get us anyway. You're not doing anything now anyway. I mean, even if you think there are other things that you can do, what things are being done? The mega rally has stopped. Nobody's doing it anymore. Nobody's negotiating with anybody. You are not buying guns to go and fight. What else? What are you doing? You're not doing anything. So the idea of going to say that, oh, well, the court is not going to get us out of Nigeria, you don't know that either. And at this point in time, we are not doing anything whatsoever to get out of Nigeria. I mean, Afenifere, what have they done recently? We have all this wahala going on. Afenifere, they're changing who is going to be president and who is going to be vice president. That's our organization. Gani Adams, when was the last time you heard anything from his organization? We are not doing anything. So to go to court is actually something that could enthuse bring other things. I mean, like they say where I come from, every solution comes with something else. So we should see. But I mean, I am confident. I mean, I believe that this is one way to go.
Ẹ ṣé sà.
Ẹ ṣé gan ni.
Ẹ bá kàn yàn wá ní ìkàlẹ̀ o, so that.
Àwọn náà ni mo fẹ́ kí báyìí tọ́rọ́jọ́ ti lọ. Bàbá ẹ ṣé gan ni o, agbádùn yín gan ni, ẹ ṣé lọ́pọ̀lọpọ̀. Nípa àwọn tó ti bá wa dá sí ètò náà àti àwọn bàbá wa wálé òní. Àwọn wa tó wà lórí YouTube, mo fẹ́ appreciate àwọn náà ni for being there for supporting tonight program as usual. Láti ọ̀dọ̀ bàbá wa Sanni là ń bẹ̀ wọ́n ní akúwájú o. Màmá wa ẹsẹ̀ àwọn oníyì rẹ́jẹ̀ wọ́n ní ẹ̀kú ètò. Bàbá wa là ń bẹ̀ tó sọ wípé I've been interested in exploring the USA strategies you mentioned, Dr. Oni. Let us connect after the meeting. Màmá wa Ọláṣadé Òjó wọ́n ní well done. Bàbá Sanni làbẹ́ wọ́n ní búmibu ní ọpọlọ ń ké. Something for something. Consideration. Bàbá wa Ògbóni Àbáláyé wọ́n ní ẹ kú iṣẹ́ ilẹ̀ Yorùbá. Àwọn alálẹ̀ yóò fún yín ṣe o, àmín. I couldn't join tonight. I was on errand outside Lagos. Baba Lambert sọ pé 2 barrister plus paralegal support. Wọ́n sọ nípa legal people. Okay. What's me? God bless you, sir. We are on the same page. That was Sonny Lambert. When you go into court, it's one of the strategies, not the final solution. What governance structure do we have in place? The question of feasibility. So I want to more lórí YouTube nìyẹn wọ́n ní pé a kú iṣẹ́ a kú ètò. But the last question from Baba wa Sonny Lambert, when you go into court is one of the strategies, not the final solution. Wọ́n béèrè pé what governance structure do we have in place? Bàbá wọn lè bá wa down briefly kó tó di pa parí ètò sà.
Okay, yeah, that's going to take a long time. I have I proposed the constitution for Yoruba land, which is based on the constitution that existed, what I call the constitutional Oba, which was the constitution that existed before the Europeans came. And the fact that the Alaafin signed a contract with his chiefs, he didn't sign it on his own. He had chiefs there to sign with him, tells you of how the Yorubas governed themselves in the past. We had city-states, and each city-state had an Oba and a council of chiefs. But the Oba, until the Europeans came, the Oba did not have absolute power. And all this kind of nonsense. They didn't have that power before because the chiefs were the council that made the law of the land, not the Oba. The Oba was a spokesman. The Oba was like a figurehead, like, you know, King Charles now. The law was made by the council, and that's why the Alaafin had to sign with his chiefs. And in fact, I mean, one of the landmark cases when went to the Court of Appeal, actually, the Apapa land case is a good example of where the Oba of Lagos then, I can't remember, Dosumu or whatever his name was, had given land to the government, to the colonial government, and one of the chiefs challenged it, that the land was not for the Oba to give. So we will have to, in my view, we will have to forget Western style government completely. We'll have to go back to what our forefathers did, which was almost like a local government, where you have your own local government. So the people of Ibadan will govern Ibadan. The people of Ijebu, they will govern Ijebu, like that. And then you come together as a confederacy. That, in my view, is how the government should go. Finally, the fact that you haven't got a government ready does not prevent you from leaving Nigeria. When you've left Nigeria, you can decide what you want to do after that. The first job is to leave Nigeria. When you start thinking of Kilamashi after we have left Nigeria, you're putting the cart before the horse. You leave Nigeria first, and then decide. The most important thing is to leave. You know, this is not a constitutional problem. This is not a restructuring problem. We want to leave Nigeria. When we leave Nigeria, when we get to where we are going, we can decide how we're going to rule ourselves.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ẹ jọ̀ọ́ bí mo bóyá ṣì ní bí ìṣẹ́jú méjì sí mo rí àwọn kọ́mẹ̀ntì kan lórí àwọn tó wà lórí Zoom. Probably you've already answered it, but kí n kàn fi satisfy ní tó kọ síbẹ̀. The first one is, I would like the Yoruba to drive. Oh, no, not this one, sir. If the British signed the treaty recognizing the Yoruba as a country in 1888, why then did the British match the Yoruba with the northern Nigeria in 1918? That's
the breach of contract.
Yeah.
That's what we are talking about. That's the breach of contract. Yeah. They had no right. They had no right to sign.
Breach of contract yẹn láti rí i pé wọ́n rú wa náà ni pé wọ́n rí i pé personally wọ́n rí kíní yẹn ṣe fúnra wọn náà wá fi lọ ní kọ́ amalgamate wa pẹ̀lú àwọn northern region yẹn torí wọ́n rí àwọn yẹn lò àwọn náà last instrument, and that's why they are killing us. Òun ló fi dàbí pé àwọn yẹn náà ń jẹ́ gàba lé wa lórí, so wọ́n wá máa jẹ́ náà fi wá fún wa ní orúkọ Nàìjíríà yẹn, so wọ́n jẹ́ ká máa jẹ́ Yorùbá land wa tá à ń jẹ́ tẹ́lẹ̀, so wọ́n fi ṣe bójúbójú ni. Wọ́n wá ń lò wọ́n as instrument. So while we are now Nigeria, they are using them to carry out their businesses. Ara breach of contract in here. So Baba, they modify answer me.
I'm happy with that.
Thank you. Second question. The second one. What can the Yoruba as a country recognized by the British then do now about the treaty?
That's
and
what
and what steps can the Yoruba take now about the compensation?
We go to court. Yeah, that will be decided by the court. We go to court. I mean, as we are talking, an example of what can be achieved was, the Mau of the British ill-treated people in Kenya. And I think it was Joanna Lumley, if I remember correctly, spearheaded the fight for compensation for the descendants of those who are injured by the British. So there are cases. I mean, when one is sitting down with lawyers, these are the sort of things that will come. That the lawyer would then be looking into, that one will be telling him that the case by Joanna Lumley, they got the British to pay compensation. They went to court, and the Kenyans won. They won the damages, and I don't think it took many years. I don't think it took more than a year between the time that they filed the case. And I mean, I haven't looked at that case for a while now, but what happened was that the Kenyans that were detained in camps and they were ill-treated were, sued the British government for compensation. And that's exactly what we are going to try and do.
dúpẹ́ gan sà ẹ ṣé gan lọ́pọ̀lọpọ̀ àgbàdo yìí gan ni olúwa ràn wá lọ́wọ́ àdúrà wa gbà nǹkan fẹ́ béèrè ọmọdé ni pé tá a bá fẹ́ gbé kéèsì lọ sí kóòtù bó lọ wá máa wá gbé lọ sà.
International court.
Me personally, I go to the High Court in London.
London, okay. Ẹ ṣé.
Me personally, I go to the High Court in London, yes.
Bàbá bá mi tó mú fà á sí ọ̀dọ̀ yín láti bá wa dúpẹ́ lọ́wọ́ wọn àti àwọn aráalé àwọn ètò wá sí ìparí àti kọjá.
Ẹ ṣé gan ni ẹjọ́ má bínú pé a kọjá àlàlé ni o ẹjọ́ torí Ọlọ́run iṣu tá a gbé wá ni ló fà á so àti bàbá wa máa ṣègùn pé wọ́n ṣeun gan ni a dẹ̀ mọ̀ pé ẹ ti sọ náà ẹ wá fún àwọn ìmíì torí eré àti ẹlíbọ̀ fún yẹn ẹ tún wáyé ìjọ tẹ bá máa wà available so that ẹ sọ fún àgbẹ̀ sí ààyè pé kẹwàá gbà tún sọ more about it akin gan ni pé ṣe then bàbá wa lè òní àkí ẹ̀yin náà o more blessing mo kí bàbá wa Ọlátúnjà ẹ ṣé gan mo kí ẹnjìnà wa Yágbóyájú more blessings mo kí màmá wa Patient mo kí bàbá wa Ẹ̀sọ́lá nọ́ọ̀sẹ̀ mo dẹ̀ tún kí bàbá wa yèyé wa Ẹ̀lárẹ̀mílẹ́kún ẹ ṣé gan ni àwa tí mo rí ń bíbá yìí ni mo kí wọ̀nyẹn so gbogbo ẹni tẹ́ wá wà ní YouTube ìyá Àbíkẹ́ mo kí bá mi tò gbogbo ẹni tẹ́ wà ní YouTube náà àkí gbogbo yín o bí mi tẹ́ rí orúkọ yín but we very very much appreciate you mama Patient ẹ ṣé gan ni mama bàbá wa là ń bẹ̀ bàbá Councillor là ń bẹ̀ sẹ́wọ̀n pẹ́ẹ́ náà jẹ́ wá lógún àti padà wá o a máa tún padà kàn sí so ẹ ṣé gan ni n tá à ń ṣe à ń try láti jẹ́ kàn yan wá wà àgbẹ̀ amenities torí àwọn nǹkan tèmi náà gbọ́ lénìí ara ìtàn tó lágbára ni n tó dẹ̀ dáa dẹ̀ ni tá a bá ń ṣe báyìí tí ò yé wa a máa yé wa a lè mọ where we are going mo mọ̀ pé àwọn tó bàbá mi ní defend anybody but iṣẹ́ ń lọ lábẹ́lẹ̀ àwọn ń ṣe nǹkan kan tó pé kò tíì jáde síta náà ni but definitely gbogbo ẹ̀ náà á jọra wọn torí ká mú bí ká mú lọ́ọ̀ náà ni tí ò báyìí tí ì di ohun àti mọ̀ pé à ń ṣe anything but pẹ̀lú ògo Ọlọ́run a ṣe ẹ rí pé àwa kan àwọn aládùúgbò kan wà tán gbàdúrà pé yes n tó máa mú kí Nàìjíríà yapa kó já
kíákíá
lọ́la pété pé Ọlọ́run ṣe ó dẹ̀ ń ṣe à ń rí sáyìn tó ń gbà tí tó ń sìn di ààrẹ nìyẹn àdúrà dẹ̀ wà pé àwọn tán bá dalẹ̀ tán jẹ́ kí Yorùbá nation wáyé wọ́n á bá lè lọ Ọlọ́run dẹ̀ yanjú wọn díẹ̀díẹ̀ ó wà sympathetic kan pé we are losing people but àwọn bò ṣe ti wà náà òun náà lè sọ yẹn ká ní ọba dìde ni wọn pa ọba mẹ́ta kí kankan má dìde pé ẹ pa wá lọ́ba gbà kan àwọn gómìnà wọn dìde torí pé ìjẹkújẹ táwọn rí jẹ wọn ń kójú kúrò bí pé kò kàn wọ́n but Ọlọ́run àbá ṣe gbogbo ẹ̀ ìgbàkigbà tó bá máa ṣẹlẹ̀ kò ní sẹ́yìn gbogbo wa àjọ débẹ̀ ni mo kí gbogbo wa ẹ̀yin tẹ́ wà níjòkó náà ẹ ṣé gan ni ẹ má bínú jọ́ mẹ́jọ ẹ tún bá pàdé bíbá yìí lágbára Ọlọ́run a máa sọ fún àwọn tá a bá máa tún wá ṣe ìpàdé pẹ̀lú wa bàbá wa ẹ ṣé gidi gan ni o I'm very very grateful that you are around bàbá wa Jàmájẹ̀bi ẹ ṣé gan amọ̀ pọ̀nà pọ̀ fún yín but ó tẹ̀ dá mi mọ̀ pé yọjú so ó dá kẹ́ yọjú a máa sọ̀rọ̀ lẹ́yìn ìpàdé o bàbá ọ̀rọ̀ wà so ẹ ṣé gan ni more blessing bàbá wa Yágbóyájú ẹ bá ṣe mi mọ̀ bóyá bàbá Látúnjà ẹ náà ẹ kí àwọn èèyàn wa
bàbá kí gbogbo wa o ẹ ṣe púpọ̀ ẹ má bínú pé a pẹ́ díẹ̀ lénìí a pẹ́ kálíbà lè pẹ́ láyé ni o ọjọ́ mẹ́jọ Ọlọ́run àtúmú kó ṣe fún wa láti wá sí orí ètò yìí ẹnjìníà wa ṣe o thank you very much ó dàárọ̀ o
ẹ ṣé gan sà.
Okay.
ó yá
Bye-bye.
tálára bá ti ń gbọ́ kó sọ fàjẹrò tájẹrò bá ti ń gbọ́ kó tàtàpọ̀ ẹ̀sọ́ tí ọwọ́ àràǹgún àga bọ́rọ̀ tó gbòde ti gbẹ̀rẹ̀gẹ̀jigẹ̀ lórí afẹ́fẹ́ ọ̀rọ̀ tó gbòde níbi tẹ́tí máa pàdé bá mẹ́tò kọ́láwọlé Idris Sule tòun tàlájà Àbíkẹ́ Akínpẹ̀lú àti balógun Òdúnifá Adébáyọ̀ pẹ̀lú pásítọ̀ Amos Ọlátújà àti Tajudeen Tìjání Àlàbí Ajámájẹ̀bi ní gbogbo ọjọ́ ìṣẹ́gun tí a mọ̀ sí Tuesday láago 4 ọ̀sán ní USA Eastern Time tó jẹ́ agogo 9 àṣálẹ́ ní UK Time àti agogo orílẹ̀-èdè Yorùbá tíá ọ̀rọ̀ tó gbòde tọmọdé tàgbà ló láǹfààní àti wètò yìí nítorí pé ó kún fọ́gbọ́n tó ń tòye tá a nílò lásìkò yìí gan ọ̀rọ̀ tó gbòde lórí ètò yìí bákan náà lẹ́ ò ti láǹfààní àti máa gbọ́ òkodoro ọ̀rọ̀ ohun tó ń lọ lágbàáyé ohun tó ń lọ nílẹ̀ Nàìjíríà àti ní orílẹ̀-èdè gbogbo láì fi ipò mọ́yọ̀ rárá fún ẹ̀kúnrẹ́rẹ́ àlàyé síwájú sí i tàbí tẹ́ ẹ bá ní àwọn ìbéèrè àti àmọ̀ràn kankan ẹ lè pe atọ́kùn ètò sórí +1 203 685 2961 tàbí kẹ́kàn sí +44 793 972 6080 bákan náà ní ẹ lè pe +234 706 787 2785 ọ̀rọ̀ tó gbòde a ò ní wá mìtì nínú olóríire àmín. Ìkéde ń dé sí ti gbẹ̀yìn látọwọ́ ìgbìmọ̀ tó wà fún ìpolongo àpapọ̀ ẹ̀sìn ilẹ̀ Yorùbá tá a mọ̀ sí Yorùbá Nation Multi-Faith. Yorùbá Nation Youth website pérégedé fi gbọ̀rọ̀ jẹ́ka fún àwọn ọ̀dọ́ ní tilé tó kó. La fi ń dúpẹ́ fún gbogbo àṣeyọrí àwọn ọ̀jọ̀gbọ́n wa. Ká sì ti ń fàkókò ibẹ̀ níbẹ̀ fún gbogbo ayé wípé àtẹ Yorùbá Nation Youth website yìí máa di títí fún lílò pérégedé lọ́jọ́ àbámẹ́ta ọjọ́ sátidé tó jẹ́ ọjọ́ kẹwàá oṣù kejì ọdún 2024. Bẹ̀rẹ̀ látago 5 ìrọ̀lẹ́ Lagos time lórí ìtàkùn afẹ́fẹ́ ayélujára Zoom meeting ID 820-917-915-98 nígbà tí passcode sì jẹ́ 787156. Olùgbàlejò pàtàkì ọjọ́ náà ni bàbá wa emeritus Professor Banji Akintoye tí ọba Abímbọ́lá Akilẹ̀ Balógun sì jẹ́ chief launcher. Guest speaker ọjọ́ náà ni Akite Akinlọlá George àti Honourable Ọláìdé Adéyẹyẹ. Fún ẹ̀kúnrẹ́rẹ́ àlàyé síwájú sí i ẹ kàn sí wa látòrí www.yorubanation.youth.org tàbí kẹ́pẹ́ comrade Yagboyaju tí wọ́n jẹ́ assistant youth leader in Homeland lórí +971 525 261 442. Comrade Ọmọborí Owó youth coordinator and assistant youth leader in diaspora lórí +971 503 430 843. Bákan náà ni ẹlẹ́pẹ́ comrade Omeyo tí wọ́n jẹ́ Yorùbá Nation youth leader for Homeland lórí +234 703 717 3355. Tàbí kẹ́pẹ́ prophet Ayọ̀délé Ológunlolúwa tí wọ́n jẹ́ Yorùbá Nation youth leader in our diaspora lórí +1 803 846 1116. Ẹ má gbàgbé wípé lọ́gán lẹ́yìn ìfilọ́lẹ̀ yìí ní ìkànnì náà máa di lílò fún gbogbo àwọn ọ̀dọ́ jákèjádò àgbáyé. Bákan náà ni a ó máa ṣe àfihàn lọ́jìn tó bá ń lọ live lórí Yorùbá World Media, Home Base Media, Yeye Dara Talk Show, Koiki Media àti gbogbo ìkànnì mìíràn tó sọ̀rọ̀ sókè nípa òmìnira orílẹ̀-èdè Yorùbá. Níbi ìkójáde Yorùbá Nation Youth website yìí gbogbo ọ̀dọ́ Yorùbá pátá lálejò pàtàkì nítorí wípé gbogbo wa là ń retí ń bẹ́ẹ̀. Olùkéde Prophet Ayọ̀délé Ológunlolúwa fún gbogbo àwọn ọ̀dọ́ Yorùbá pátápátá.